Good morning. Afternoon, I should say. I do that every week. Well, it's been morning, now it's afternoon, but here we are at the third week of the legislature for another edition of Capital Clarity. This really is a fantastic program, and I hope as the legislative session moves on, we get more and more people to come in and get involved. How many other places can you just go and interact with your legislators, ask them unscripted questions, get the full truth from them, and hear not only that, hear what's actually going on in the legislature? I think too often people get, in the political realm, get too comfortable with very controlled, scripted events. And this is not that. This is where we just invite people here to talk about what is important to them and what they're working on. And we invite you here to ask your questions and share what's important to you. So I'm very lucky to be here. My name is Brian Ullman, and I am privileged to be doing this for Idaho Freedom Foundation once again. If you have not signed up for IFF emails, make sure to go to idahofreedom.org. You can do it on your phones right now. Put in your email address. You'll get a couple emails a week talking about what's going on in the legislature, what policies are coming up, and really a lot of big picture ideas. Why is the budget the way it is? Why is Medicaid the way it is? What can you do to fix it, to make it better? We also have some stuff in the back, some information on how to donate to support IFF, as well as a QR code if you want to use that to get the emails. And most of the literature I brought looks like it's already been scooped up. But we have the 2023 Freedom Index. It's a rating of all of the legislators from last year's session on how they voted according to conservative principles. And just to clear up one misconception about the index before we move on. People think that IFF rates legislators. That's not actually the case. IFF rates bills. The bill text is printed, and it doesn't matter what the intention of the legislator is. It doesn't matter what they say in committee. It doesn't matter what they want it to do. But our policy experts look at the text of the bill, compare it to some transparent, objective principles that come out of the U.S. and Idaho state constitutions, and say, does this expand government or shrink it? Does it encroach on the private sector, or does it remove government from the private sector, et cetera? And once those bills are rated, when the legislators vote on them, they create their own scores by how they vote. So it's a very, very important tool. Go to idahofreedom.org and you can see last year's index as well as see how this year's is starting to develop as legislators are starting to vote on things. So today we have a lot to go through. We're going to be talking really about one agency, and that's the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. They take up, through Medicaid, I believe, they take up the largest single share of the state budget. And so they have a lot of money that they can move around in various places. They have a lot of line items, a lot of employees. They have their fingers in a lot of things. If you drove in here, you might have seen one of the Boise City buses that talks about hepatitis B being curable. That's Department of Health and Welfare. You might have seen a big sign that says, you can stop smoking. That's Department of Health and Welfare. If for whatever reason, like me, you were a bit masochistic and came to one of the Boise Pride parades, you might have seen that they had a big booth there. That's Department of Health and Welfare. If you look into the sex ed curricula of some of our public schools, that's Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. So we're going to have two legislators here today. We have one now just walking in, but we'll have the other when the Senate adjourns for the day. But before that, IFF's policy analyst, Nicholas Kleinworth, has really been digging into this agency, their budgets, and what they've been up to. So he's going to come up and share some things, and then we have a short video to share that we've put together to explain what is going on. Nicholas.
Thank you, Brian. So I'm here to tell you that fundamentally, your government is no longer the constitutional republic that your founders and our founders of this country established in the Constitution. Instead, it is run by a permanent and entrenched bureaucracy. And keep in mind, I'm not just talking about Washington, D.C. I'm talking about Idaho. Now, if you were like me, moved to Idaho thinking that Idaho is one of the most conservative states in the country, known for liberty and neighborliness and making your own way in life. Many of you in this room probably even fled socialist states like California, Washington, Oregon, and those other places where the government took too much control over your lives. But I have some bad news. It's here in Idaho too. and it's growing. The past year, we dug into the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and looked into some of the programs that they're administering and the programs that are growing, and the programs that we're funding with our tax dollars. And what we found was some of the most egregious examples of an executive agency that is running amok of the law, the legislature, and the people that they're supposed to be serving. Here's what we found. Drug abuse, porn literacy, pride festivals, and the abortion lobby. Drug abuse, porn literacy, pride festivals, and the abortion lobby are all being supported by Idaho's out-of-control bureaucrats, namely the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. The agency spends billions of dollars of your money on programs that dissolve the nuclear family, break down communities, and entrench government dependence. Many Idahoans choose to live in this great state for its unique culture and values that make it a safe place for our families to thrive and make their own way independent of government intervention. But the policies at the IDHW threaten this lifestyle, and bureaucrats there are emboldened to implement their agenda at all costs. It's time Idahoans effected a culture shift to downsize influence and increase accountability in their government. This year, budget writers in the legislature cut or redirected nearly $66 million in funds from the agency in response to these harmful programs. But agency leaders are doubling down on their initiatives and goals if it means hiding their legislature. In March of 2023, the director of IDHW's Division of Public Health, Elke Shaw-Tolik, shared her displeasure over the legislature's decision to cut programs like Pride event sponsorships, COVID vaccines, and sex education from the division's budget.
We'll see some shifts in the politics of our state over time. I actually had a really great conversation with the legislator who said it's going to get worse before it gets better. This is some national movement of some of these very conservative organizations that are going from state to state to state to do exactly this. It's this disruption. Just know that we're not alone. It feels yucky and gross, but I think these sands will shift, and we'll have to just kind of ride this wave for a while, and do what we can. And we might be doing some things a little bit more quietly than we used to.
Leftism is entrenched in the IDHW and their programs. Their federally funded diversity bureaucracy, the Bureau of Equity and Strategic Partnerships, requires all employees to take diversity, equity, and inclusion training. The Bureau developed an agency-wide DEI policy to hold employees accountable. It even enacts their own federally supported programs like Get Healthy Idaho, where it effectuates race-based social justice and equity initiatives throughout the state. The IDHW perverts Idaho's culture through its extensive array of government programs and handouts. For example, the department funds Planned Parenthood-endorsed sex education curricula that exposes children to topics including porn literacy, cartoon depictions of porn, queering sex education, and even how to get an abortion. Some of the content even coaches children how to hide their browsing history from their parents. These programs harm children by encouraging the same poor choices that lead to single parenthood, poor mental and physical health, and the destruction of innocent life. Funding programs harmful to children doesn't end there. Just last year, the IDHW spent thousands of dollars from public funds to support LGBTQ pride events. This included the 2022 Boise Pride Festival featuring a drag show with child performers. Public outrage forced the department to revoke their sponsorship of the event, but they continue to fund similar pride groups throughout the state to this day. IDHW also subsidizes drug abuse through the Idaho Harm Reduction Project. Being almost completely government funded, this nonprofit uses your money to give away drug paraphernalia, condoms, and Narcan to drug users. They even support other harmful activities like sex work and transgenderism. When legislators tried to defund this wasteful program, the IDHW simply repurposed other federal grants to cover the gap. It is commonplace for the IDHW to go against the will of the legislature and use grants for their own purposes. The department was recently investigated for repurposing federal grants intended for daycare support to entrench government control of pre-K instead. In doing so, the department went $500,000 over budget and sent nearly all the money to just 4 organizations. Some, like the Idaho Association for the Education of Young Children, have a track record of promoting woke and Marxist ideology on children as young as preschool age. This is criminal malfeasance of tax dollars and deliberate disregard for the law and the parameters set by the legislature. How can the department run around the law and the legislature like this? All of this is made possible by just a few sections of Idaho code that grant the agency broad powers and provide no mechanism for accountability. It is time that the legislature held the bureaucracy accountable by permanently reducing the legal flexibility of the department in statute and cutting funds for programs the legislature did not authorize. Reducing the IDHW's power also includes reducing the number of Idahoans dependent on their services and curbing the department's mission creep to projects outside of their scope of authority. There must also be a culture shift within the IDHW. Though Dave Jepson is now retired as the director of IDHW, his replacement must be carefully selected to procure a culture of accountability to the taxpayer and their representatives in the legislature. Additionally, the legislature should hold the department leadership accountable for their intentional circumvention of the law. Reining in Idaho's rogue bureaucracies can bring the government back in check by the people. Cutting back unnecessary programs and restraining the power of unelected officials restores liberty and halts the socialist takeover of our state. Idahoans must act to preserve the gem state as a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. So you all actually got the preview of IFF's first mini documentary talking about what the IDHW has been doing in their department. And one thing that I wanted to comment on that the video didn't really have room to talk about, and there was that point that Director Tolick made about how the political winds are going to be shifting. And I want to illustrate that the IDHW is a key component of those political winds shifting. So, and here's the game, the IDHW. The game is to destroy the family, increase dependency on government services in order to thwart our liberties. Now, keep in mind that stacking welfare benefits in Idaho pays $4.11 more per hour than the median wage in our state. And in many cases, families that are on the welfare system, they're just making a rational decision. Why would you get off welfare if you can make more by staying on welfare? And on the things like funding pride events and drug abuse and those other programs, you get what you pay for. You get more of what you pay for when you subsidize it, not less. And so this enacts a culture shift within our state, and enacts a culture shift that will eventually become turn Idaho into what we see in California and Washington and Oregon. One study by the Foundation for Government Accountability found that the Democratic margin in the 2020 election was only 4.5%. Low-income people that were never on welfare, the Democratic margin was 2.2%. But those who were currently on welfare during the 2020 presidential election provided the Democrats a margin of 32.6%. And so this illustrates that there is no such thing as a harmless government program. They continue to proliferate and expand, and they reach into new sectors of our state. That program, Get Healthy Idaho, is a perfect example of mission creep within the IDHW. They reach into sectors like transportation and park restoration and other things that have nothing to do with the mission of the IDHW. And we already fund these things through other agencies like the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Department of Transportation. So as citizens, what do we have to do? We must ensure that our lawmakers aren't growing the welfare state. We should be skeptical of new proposals for new welfare programs and new things to sign people up for. The legislature should also hold the bureaucracy accountable for running around the law. And we need to design a welfare system that helps people get off the welfare system and lead independent lives, rather than treating people as customers in the welfare system and trying to get as many as we possibly can. Some of the best lawmakers in this building who have been doing this are Representative Josh Tanner and Senator Glenneda Zuiderveld. I'm happy to introduce Glenneda Zuiderveld to talk about what she's discovered in the IDHW, specifically those child care stabilization grants. She led the effort for peeling back what was going on and helping us see what was going on in the bureaucracy. So please give her a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me, I came straight from the Senate floor here, so you're getting my coffee, all my floor stuff. It's kind of been that day today. Everything's running a little bit late. So, okay, I'm here. Thank you all for coming and just making the effort to get involved and engaged in your government. It really is your duty and your responsibility. And I can speak for many of us here that we truly do appreciate every single one of you making that time and effort. It really is part of our duty to give our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. And you guys are definitely doing that by doing this. You're not getting paid to come here and listen and be part of your government. So I just want to thank you for all of that. So let me pull up my screen real quick. So I can be on the same page here. So I first wanted to talk about, and you said I had a clicker? Okay. Yeah, arrow this way? Okay, there we go. Okay, so I want to share the reason why I'm sharing this picture, and I got to pull it up on my screen so I can read it. Okay, it's not pulling it up there. Sorry, everybody. I can read it from here. So last year on what I call my whistleblower. So last year, my freshman year, I wanted to make sure everybody knew who I represented. When they come into my office, I would tell them that I am the people's senator. I'm here to not just to do bills and be on committees, but I'm here to expose corruption. And it started from this picture here. I had received this from somebody. I actually have this exact picture in my office. And so when they come into my office, I always point to them number 9 on that picture, and it says, expose corruption wherever discovered. And so this gentleman that came into my office and we were talking about different things, he came to my office the very next morning. And he says, are you sure you want to expose corruption? And I says, 100%. I says, that's what I told the people I would do. And then he proceeded to tell me it was health and welfare. And I says, well, I'm not afraid of health and welfare. And so then he put a file about 1 inch thick on my desk. And he said, this is proof of $10 million of misappropriations in health and welfare. And I was kind of blindsided and wanting to protect my sacred honor and my integrity. I says, can I verify this information? Because I wasn't here the previous years when this was done, and I would like to verify this information. So I sent it to Senator Ron Nate, or not Senator Ron Nate, excuse me, Representative at that time, Ron Nate, and to Representative Priscilla Giddings, because they were part of JFAC that fought where the money was going with our daycares. And so I gave it to them and they verified that it was true. Then we proceeded to do an article on it, which then brought it to the attention of the AG. And so when the AG called us in along with the whistleblower, he asked us what we wanted to do. You know, these are our options. We can either fire some people, we can subpoena some people. There's a list of everything, and right away we all said, we want to do all of it. And so he took it up. So he took it up and he did the FOIA, and there was a lot of stuff that went on with that. But I want to fast forward to today so that I can get on to my other topics I was wanting to share. So today, that $10 million is now $71 million of misappropriations and is in criminal investigations right now. It's no longer in his office, but in criminal investigations. That's why it's so important for us as legislators that we need to go there and make sure that we're exposing the corruption, because that's your tax dollars. And when we make laws, it's specific. They don't get to decide where they think it's better used. We're there to do a job. We represented you. We're accountable to you. And then that's the way it was going. So I just wanted to give you kind of an update on that and why it's so important to me to expose this corruption. So the next thing I want to talk about, where I believe there's a lot of issues, and what I have learned in my freshman year is rules. So every committee, every year, we do rules and regulations. And so how the rules and regulations work is basically we make law. Then once it's passed, both chambers, once it's signed by the governor, then it goes, he assigns it to an agency and they make rules to go along with the laws that we make. And I want to read to you. So it says here, the Idaho defines rulemaking as a process for formulation, adoption, amendment, or repeal of a rule. This process can be driven by a number of different events, but two of the most common are enactment of a new or amended statute by our state legislature, or the enactment of a new law or regulation by the federal government. So this is what we see as your legislature. Every day we get an agenda in our committees. Every committee has it: health and welfare, ag, transportation, and we go through some of the rules. Health and welfare, and I think resources was the second or close first of having the most rules per committee. I have over 938 pages of rules, and that's only a small portion. We don't do all the rules all the time. So I just want to educate you on this, because I think it's important for you guys to know what's going on so that you can be watching and you can help us, because I do believe this is where some shenanigans are taking place. So this is what I see and this is what I get. This is my agenda. So you will see the docket number in the blue, the 24-0501-2301. And I'll show you later, I'll be going through where you can find these and help read these rules and help you understand how to actually read them. So this is what we get, and then we have somebody presenting them. Next, I want to show you this here. If you guys can take a picture with your phone or write down the website at the bottom, I kind of shared that with you. This is what you're going to see that's going to show all the 2024 rules that we're dealing with. And again, that changes every year. So when you go and you can click on that, you have pending rules and you have temporary rules. And if you want to see what's going on in your environment and health and welfare, your judiciary, you can go in there and you can click on there and start reading. So then that kind of shows you what the cover looks like. This is your table of contents. So when you go into that website, you'll see that page, and then you scroll up and then you can see this page. You can actually hit on any of those documents. If you just tap on it, it'll take you directly to the location of that rule. So here I was wanting to share with you that this just took place yesterday, and I had some help from the House side. And because I also want to say the House and the Senate, we both do the rules. Are duplicated, or they'll move them somewhere else. Then in the red, so the blue will be removed, the red is inserted. Okay, so when you're going through that, you can go and see what are they moving, what are they removing, what are they putting in. But then they also have, before you see this part, you'll see how it's written without all of that. You'll be able to just go through and read it the way they have it. But if you want to see what they've taken out or putting in, then you'll keep scrolling and then you'll see this. And it's important because it helps us when you're looking at all this stuff to see what they're putting in. So in this area, this area on line or section H, and I can't read it from here, but it says in providing a series services, a social worker may not discriminate on the basis of age, gender. Now they added to gender identity, sexual orientation, race, color, religion, and so on. So they're adding that language to that. So my question to them is, because they only have the authority to put stuff in there through our statutes. So at the very beginning, when you're reading this, you'll see by the authority, and they'll share all the statutes that they have the authority to change, amend, remove our rules. They added that to our rules on a statute. And I asked them, I said, was that specific language that gave you that permission to put that in there? And they didn't have that permission. So the rule didn't, the statute didn't give them the permission to add that in there. And if they wouldn't have caught it, we were able to remove that and strike that information. But that's how dangerous it is. If we're not paying attention, and they're bringing it to us so quick and fast, if we're not paying attention, if we don't have people that could help us and help watch with this, it's hard to catch stuff like this where they're actually putting stuff in the rules. And a lot of the rules are actually more, you would think are more like law than rules. And they're actually doing it without following the statute that made that. And so I just was wanting to share what's going on with this. We're always concentrating on the bills. We do want to have bills, but it's very important that we make sure that we help the people on the committees to read the rules, because that's where a lot of things are changing and happening, and we can't catch it fast enough. And so that's just one area I was wanting to share with all of you, because I feel like that's what I'm doing in health and welfare right now. When I was asked to speak on health and welfare, I thought I'm not really doing a whole lot. There is going to be some bills coming forward. But right now we're dealing with rules. And I thought, what would you like to know that's going on right now in our committees? And that's what's going on. And we hear, like I said, last year was over 1,000 pages, and it probably goes maybe a fourth of the rules all the time, is what I was told. So we're only, 1,000 pages every 4 years we're going through rules. So we're not even going through all of them all the time. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. If there's any questions on that, if you would like to, I'll go back here first because she raised her hand first.
For those on the stream.
You were saying that they add things or delete things. Who is the they? Are they elected people or are they?
No.
No.
No, so basically when we make the laws and the governor signs it, he sends it to the agency that best fits it. So when we make a law, it'll go to the health and welfare. It'll go to the ag, but it's your agencies that are appointed by your governor that are the ones that are helping us with the rules. And if I need any help with that, you can correct me or add something to it. But that's basically who's doing it, is your agencies. The chairman's basically that, and then they hire the help, but they're not elected officials, no. Yes, Daniel.
Can you hear me all?
Not really. I can.
I don't
hear
think it's
you.
working. Anyways, my question would be, for these agencies, would you think that there's mostly the leftist Democrats that work in these agencies that kind of tweak all of they make the rules that might be a little bit different than what the legislation has been passed?
I think there's probably a nice mixture of both. I won't say that it's all the left liberal. There's probably a nice mixture of the both. But again, we're actually going through gubernatorial appointments. So part of being on the Senate side, we actually do, the governor will do gubernatorial appointments to like your environmental quality, different boards of these agencies that help with a lot of stuff. And I can honestly say that this session, I've probably seen two that are actually have been Democrats that were nominated by a Republican governor. And so it's kind of a mixture.
Just a reminder that the purpose of the microphone is not for this room. It's so that the people on the stream can hear what you're asking. Thank you.
Senator, let's say you're saying that only about 25% of the rules are getting reviewed in whatever you're working on. Let's say you find something later on that has a real discrepancy, something you don't like at all. Maybe the language is something you're aware of that wasn't the intent of the bill. Can you revisit that? What's the process of circling back around and getting that corrected later?
That's a good question. And honestly, I don't know. Being a freshman, I haven't had that opportunity. Do you know, Josh? Yes. Well, you want to share when you're up at the mic? So he'll answer that because I'm assuming that we can correct that because that's part of our job as well, is to go in there and make statutes to correct that. The proper process is for us, your legislators, to make the statutes to correct things or change things. But they're kind of taking it upon themselves to, like I said, put things in there that really don't belong. And then I also want to say, because we do take a lot of federal money in health and welfare, you will see a lot of your rules will actually go to your federal codes and rules and laws and stuff. You'll see that according to the federal, this is the reason why we have this rule. And because of that is because a lot of the federal money that's coming in. Because that was a question I asked on this part here. I says, is this Idaho statute that you're putting that in there or federal? And it ended up where that was the Idaho code that they were trying to put it in there that did not state that they were able to do that.
Well, since you brought that up, and maybe Representative Tanner too would have input, has there been any percentages of how much of the federal statutes we have to follow as opposed to the Idaho statutes? Like,
I don't know that. I just know that when I'm seeing that, and this is what gives them the authority, they'll say federal or they'll put the statute number on there. And so, or as you're reading it, it'll say the federal code on there. So they're sharing where that's at. So, but I do know that with our help, and he'll probably touch on it and it might've changed. It depends on the program. We're 60 to 90% funded depending on the program by the federal. So health and welfare is probably the largest federal funded agency.
thank you.
Yes.
After him, that's fine.
No, please, you go first.
Just to clarify, so do these agencies, they put this language in and then you're reviewing the language and then approving it or saying, no, you don't have the authority to change or add to that rule?
Yes.
Is
we
that-
do- mhm.
correct?
Yes, so we do read it, review, and they kind of give us a presentation over it, and it's kind of a quick saying that they removed this and because of this statute, or it's duplicated, or, you know, they'll give you a reason why they had made that change, or zero-based regulations. And so they'll kind of give you the overview of it. And then as a committee, we will vote on it to pass it or not pass it. And if we see something in there, then we can change it. So like on this one here, I did vote to have it, motion to have it go forward to pass, striking that.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can even do that as well.
And then the other 3/4 of the rules that you're not reviewing right now, are they not allowed to put things in? They're only allowed to, the agency's allowed to insert or delete and bring it before you on the section that you're covering that session? Does that make sense?
It does. So I don't know how they decide which ones. It's probably whatever new rules are coming in.
Okay.
Or if something has changed with the federal, and then when they go through it, they're looking at the statute and at the rule and seeing how it lines up. And then they'll even make corrections if there's like a spelling error or grammar. If there's different, they'll make all those corrections as they're reviewing it. But I don't know how exactly what makes them decide to overview those certain ones at that time. So
Okay, thanks.
good questions. Hopefully I'll learn all those.
Let's do one more.
Yes, thank you. Is there a representative, a deputy attorney general responsible to the agency involved in writing the rule after they receive the legislation?
Honestly, you have to forgive me. You're getting the freshman overview of all of this, but they do have, like I said, your agency, you have your deputies and people that are over looking at it and presenting it to us. But somebody above that in the AG's office is what you're asking me?
Well, in the AG, there's a deputy attorney general from the AG's office responsible to the agency. Do they review the rule prior to it being presented to you?
I have no idea. Maybe represent. Oh. Oh,
I don't know all the specifics, but the answer is yes. There is always somebody that any of these agencies can get in touch with at the Attorney General's office, and they have people who are specifically responsible for helping with legislation as well.
Is that part of the process?
Since it's up to the administration, how they're making the rules, I think they're the ones that get to decide who they're going to talk to or what they're going to ask. But I'm certain that it's almost always in the process because there's always somebody from the AG's office that they are assigned to that they can talk to. So that's as far as I know. For the most part, yes, it's available. Whether it's mandatory, I do not know the answer to that.
good question, and it's something that we'll try to find out. So thank you so much for helping me out there. I appreciate it. And so that's all I have. And thank you again. I really do appreciate all of you, and appreciate it.
Thank you to Senator Zuiderveld for that. And I know there's a lot more questions out there. Hopefully, she might have a few minutes, but I know, it's a very busy day. So, yeah. So try and catch her and ask your questions, and we'll get to the bottom of this. So, we have about 20 minutes left. It's my pleasure to introduce my own representative from where I live, Representative Josh Tanner.
Well, you guys actually have some really good questions, and I think the rules are a big one to focus on. So I'll touch on it just briefly because I did actually teach a class. There's some of the people in this room that actually were able to take my class, but this is actually on the rule process. It was one of those things where you start looking at it, and we're still unique in the state of Idaho on how we do the rule process. We have a lot of authority. We're one of the few states that actually has authority to do some of the stuff, what we do within the rules. Most states, the agencies have kind of carte blanche ability to write rules into law in a sense. Now we have the ability, last year we actually passed some legislation that stopped it from used to be only one body had to pass it, and then it became law. Again, that doesn't sound like a very fair law. But we did pass something that it stated this last year that both actually have to be, both bodies have to pass it before it becomes effective. The interesting thing is it's now being one of our agencies is actually suing the state over it. It is going to Supreme Court. They're saying we can't do that. I think we will fare very well in that one. But it is a fight. This is a powerful thing that the agencies actually have. Just talking around health and welfare, one of the things that I'm an odd one because I've actually read through most rules, especially in the off season. There's temporary rule changes that happen continuously. And so I've read through a lot of the rules, and I caught one where they were actually adding the federal CFR into it. And this deals with the qualifications for Medicaid for citizens and non-citizens. And I was going, well, why are we doing this? So then I go to the federal CFR code and I start reading through that. And I realize that as you're reading out through it for the non-citizen qualifications, it states certain stipulations that they have to follow unless they don't have a social security number and then unless they don't have documented immigration status, then they can still qualify. So even though the rule itself says we do not allow non-citizens to qualify, we just put the federal CFR in there that says we do. And this is a problem. I mean, the Red Tape Reduction Act that was done from Little's office when he first came in was a good thing. He actually got an award, got recognized from Trump regarding that. But what agencies have actually started to do is to realize that, well, all we have to do is put that federal side in there, and it looks like we're reducing, but we're just adding all this stuff in. I think Ms. Gaston asked about if there were federal CFRs that we don't have to actually follow, and the answer is yes. There are agencies that have put the federal CFR in that we do not have. We have the authority. We don't have to actually follow that, yet we're now following that. So I'm working on some stuff to actually help clean that up, to help stop that from going on further. We should be taking our authority back every chance we can from the federal government, pushing back on it. But we'll move past rules. It was really interesting. That was the first time I actually got to see IFF's presentation. It was, or the video that we got a chance to watch. Most of the stuff that was actually done on that was stuff that actually I got a chance to work on through JFAC. So there's a ton of stuff that we were able to do this last year. Senator Zuiderveld actually was able to expose a big portion of it. I actually worked on exposing the money side of it. So what we really found is that health and welfare is more of like, just picture a big, large tunnel, and their job and their goal is to take this money, most of it federal, and just pass it back through out there to the Idaho Harm Reduction Project, which is giving out and teaching how to use drugs, needles to everything else. So we put some legislation in that tried stopping the Narcan and the needle exchange and making first responders being the only one that can actually give those programs out. What they turned around and did, and they decided to fund the needle part, and they didn't want to follow our rules. So they said, well, we're just going to do it through some other federal grants. So then they went through the HIV and the hepatitis C program, and they started funding it through that. So there's going to be more and more that we continually have to do. I mean, they don't listen to us. They should. And I think after this year after last year, they got shaken up a lot. We do have the new director has been working in a better way, I think, with accountability, but we still have a long way to go. Medicaid itself is a socialistic program that is ruining our country. You look at our entire debt right now. One of the largest expenditures that is out there currently, and it's every budget cycle, is Medicaid and Medicare. We're spending right now this year, we're at I think $1.7 trillion is what we're expending out in those programs. It's absolutely insane. This is our tax money that we're funneling out. Now, there are people that truly need help. But what was done before 1965 when this was put in place was the churches. It was your neighbors. That is what how the United States actually operated for generations. And they decided, I mean, what part of government is better than they think they can fix everything and they think they're the best solution to everything, and not you, not the individuals out there. And so they take power, they take control over that. And that is exactly the worst thing that, I mean, anytime we've ever seen that happen throughout history, that is destruction. That is pulling your power away. And maybe somebody doesn't want to go to a church or to an individual and ask for help. But that is what connects us. That is what has one of the things that made America so great for so long. And we've lost that. We've lost that sense of connection. So many of our churches anymore, they go help out. I mean, we're helping foreign countries out constantly. I mean, we're doing mission trips. We're not doing the ground roots, the helping the people in our backyard, our neighbors, our friends. That's not the people we help because the government has taken that job over. And I think it is all of our responsibilities to make sure we actually are the ones doing that. That is where we're putting our focus because we have to counter this in some way. We can fight it, and people like myself and Senator Zuiderveld will continue to fight this and try to expose it for what it is. But it does come down to you guys, everybody in this room and everybody that's watching, to be the ones that actually make the positive change for this, to go out there and try to help your neighbor out. Also, if you do find people that are abusing this system, expose them. Expose them to representatives and senators like us that will go out there and fight with health and welfare and make sure that they're held accountable and they're doing their job because there are requirements. So poverty levels, 138% is what Medicaid actually sets it at. So anybody that falls under that poverty level or more, then they can actually qualify for that program. And there are people out there that truly need help. I won't discount that. I think there are people that are using the system that are using it in the correct way, but we have created a generation upon generation of abusers. I mean, we now look to our government every time anytime we're in trouble, if economically we're in some type of crisis, we look to the government to go bail us out. I mean, you've seen Bush do it, Clinton do it, Trump did it, Biden's done it. I mean, they've all taken that step and that power away from us to have a natural economy, and they keep manipulating it. And we're seeing our debt ratio grow because of it, our federal debt, and it scares me. I mean, I'm scared not just for myself. I'm not scared just for you. I'm scared for my kids and potentially my grandkids that come after that, because what we're doing is wrong. And this is, in my opinion, with health and welfare is the true start of the downfall of what we're doing in our society. I'll point out just a couple things, and then I know we're limited on time and we'll go to a couple questions, but COVID-19 was a big deal. People were very frustrated about what was going on, especially with the vaccine process. But what we're seeing even this year, so February of 2023, the feds, the CDC approved pediatric vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines for pediatrics. So what does our state do? Our state jumps right on top of that, and they're asking for a supplemental of $2.4 million and another $9.8 million for fiscal year 2025 for pediatric COVID-19 vaccines. I agree. So these are things that we are, just because he pointed out public health in general, this is just their initial asks, their new asks. These are page documents of asks of what new programs they want. Now, we last year cut and took a ton of stuff out, added a lot of language in, but they didn't listen. They just came back with some of the exact same things, and they just asked for them again that we told them no on last time. So they haven't got the hint. They haven't gotten the message, and I think it's going to take multiple years of fighting and exposing this to actually get it to reel this in. But with that, I will stand for any questions. Yes. Okay. I'll let Brian do this. Or Mr. Allman.
Do you know how many illegal people who have come over or come into our country illegally are on the health and welfare, whether it's Medicaid expansion, or do you know how many people we're paying for?
So I've asked this question to Health and Welfare, and they've told me that we aren't funding any of them. Again, I don't know that I believe them, but I have not been able to prove it yet. And that is something that I've been looking into, as well as, like I said, I'm working on some legislation that hopefully will stop to actually run something that actually counters the federal side even on that, and just puts it into Idaho statute that says we do not do this, so we can actually force and hold them accountable.
Representative Tanner, you brought up the Red Tape Reduction Act and Governor Little's great rule reduction. I'm more familiar with the Department of Agriculture side of it, but I know what has happened there is they have literally stripped Idaho of rules that has caused us to default to federal rules that are far more odious for our growers. And basically it has removed state ability to regulate things and has left us at the mercy of the federal government. Is that happening with Idaho Health and Welfare too? You mentioned the one where they were inserting federal rules, but has some of that red tape reduction defaulted to federal rules that are actually putting us in a worse situation?
Yes. So why I think the red tape reduction was actually a good program. It comes to a point where we have to be careful on what we're taking away, because part of those rules were to protect us from the federal side. And we actually have, so I think the administrative rules falls on the Department of Financial Management. And I've met with the director there, as well as the administrator for the administrative rules quite often. And they have been doing a good job of trying to keep that as a balance. It is tough though. They are just an agency that is a kind of a flow through, but they have been doing a good job of pushing back on some of that and not allowing some of it to actually go. But again, it comes down to us as legislators to make sure that we are setting in code things like that Senator Zuiderveld put on the screen, showing the gender ideology and stuff like that being added into the rule process. We need to be able to limit, and it's our job to make sure we're limiting the agencies through statute on what they can actually do with that. And part of our problem is we've given these agencies kind of carte blanche rulemaking and fee-making decisions, and we need to start taking our authority back.
Thank you for taking your time and educating all of us, and also to Senator Zuiderveld. These are very helpful. So it seems to me like you guys are fighting the good fight of trying to out-lawyer and out-rule somebody. And like you said, you put all these rules, you cut all this stuff, you did all this language, and they just said, I don't really care what you're doing. Here's the new ask. And at some point, it's just going to go through. And the 71 million that Glenneda talked about and Nicholas, and they're just steamrolling the rules. They're steamrolling everything. They're just being criminals. At what point do we say we're not going to rule you or lawyer you? We're just going to arrest you?
Yeah, I actually don't know, but I think that is a good, there's definitely ones that I want to go have that done on. But it is tough because the process has been improving. It has been getting better almost on a yearly basis. There's been more and more exposure. That's where I do think that red tape reduction has been successful, is because it has exposed a lot more into that rule process. Our current Speaker of the House, Mike Moyle, he was kind of the initial champion in a sense of the rules process of fighting and pushing back. And surprises maybe some people, but he was actually, he was kind of the champion that got us to the red tape reduction portion in the first place. So there are people in there. Representative Vito Barbieri from Northern Idaho. He was one of the ones that championed the bill last year on the rules to force it to get both sides. So we are seeing this coming from multiple angles. I will point out one last thing that I actually meant to point out, that I was going to point out, that of things that the federal government is actually kind of forcing back on us. So we had a big unenrollment. So under when Biden first came into office, he limited our ability on Medicaid for us to review who qualifies. So if you were displaced due to COVID, you could qualify for Medicaid. And pretty much we just saw, 150,000 something people come on to Medicaid within the state of Idaho in that period of time. It was incredible. We killed the Medicaid budget last year. We did make a cut of $136 million or $138 million from the budget because of it. Because when we started doing the unwinding, we could see the potential. But at the time, we'd only done about 36,000 people. Well, I knew that number wasn't going to be right. I knew we'd be at a lot more. I think we ended up at 136,000 roughly people that we actually took off the rolls. The feds multiple times to try to stop Idaho. Idaho was one of the first states to actually do the unwinding. So I will give Medicaid credit for that, because they and our indirect services for actually getting that done, because that was a very, we sped through that in a very, very fast way. And we were one of the first states. I think we were the first state or the second state that actually got that done. But what happened beyond that, the Biden administration, no rules actually changed. Nothing actually changed on the federal side. They just said, well, we're interpreting this rule differently, and now you need to go back and add 19,000 of these people back onto the rolls. And so our agency complied. We'll see what's going to happen. Hopefully we can get that taken care of through JFAC and push that back, and then we can turn it over to our attorney general to go fight. There are other states and other attorney generals across the state fighting back against this currently. So I'm blessed to be in a state where we have an attorney general that will go fight stuff like this for us. So. All right, we'll go back to technical questions and we'll wrap up.
So, this rule interpretation with health and welfare is done through something that we're currently hoping to overturn in DC called Chevron deference. Basically it is a lazy interpretation that basically allows agencies to interpret law instead of having Congress define it. It was a 40-year-old ruling. We're looking to overturn that. There's something similar in Idaho called a simplot difference, which is the same way for our state agencies. Is there any way we can? I hope that by the time July, 4th of July, which by that point they come out with all their big rulings at the Supreme Court, should they hopefully overturn Chevron deference at the federal level and tie these agencies behind their back? I really hope that does happen. What route is there to overturn simplot difference? Because our Idaho Supreme Court should be that would be overturning simplot would be the next step, and having the state agencies follow suit to the federal agencies should Chevron deference be ended.
I mean, you asked a question that the answer is yes. So I really do hope the federal government does actually overturn that, or the Supreme Court does. I mean, this is coming up. There's something they're addressing, and they do deal with that. One of the things that people don't realize is kind of what led us in the first place, and in my opinion, one of the greatest things that Trump and his administration actually did that most people don't have any idea about was on rules, policies, procedures, and laws. He came out and he stated that policies and procedures have zero effective law. They can write whatever they want. They cannot enforce it. That was part of the problem we were running into, is that they weren't following the rules process. They were just doing procedural type stuff and saying that these were law. And hold it, we saw this a lot during COVID. When COVID came out, they were writing procedures that were not a rule, not a statute, that were not bound by Congress, and calling it law. And that was something, in my opinion, what he fought back on and pulled back on, which was, in my opinion, was one of his greatest accomplishments that most people have no idea that he did. So, okay, one more.
Hello. Is there an official follow-up to make sure that the rules and regulations are being followed in these agencies, that they're not manipulating the language once they leave your desk? Is there an official follow-up that's done on a regular basis?
I would say yes to a degree. I mean, that is what they're required to follow. And if they don't, then that's where they get investigated. So whether it's through the rule process, through what Senator Zuiderveld and her source had kind of found out was something that we actually put in, I believe, into the appropriation side. That's where we can expose things, and then we can go after things criminally if it's done. We can go after that's where it becomes a bigger deal. Yeah.
So it's basically you're relying on whistleblowers to make sure that things are being followed up properly.
So I don't know that there's anybody within this building without the AG's office that is probably working on and looking at certain aspects of things. We are the few. We don't have staff. I spend all my time. That's one of the reasons I teach a bunch of classes on the rules process, the budget process, because if I can educate you guys on where to go find that stuff, how to actually access it. The more people that look at this, the more people that we're going to find expose something, the more true to government and the more accountability we can actually get. If you're just relying on the representatives and the senators to review all that, plus current law, plus everything else, it doesn't happen. And unfortunately, it kind of had fallen on us for a very long time to be the ones to make sure that this was actually getting done correctly. And this is a machine. This is a wheel that we get that's been going for a long time. And we're trying to slowly disrupt at times, but we're only making slight changes to a big machine. I mean, we're not going to be able to blow the machine up, but the hope is to slow that machine back down to where it's supposed to be. Government is supposed to move very, very slowly. Sometimes that's frustrating for a lot of people, but it's when government moves fast is what is really the scary part. So I appreciate everybody and thank you guys for coming. I'll turn back over to Ryan.
So I'll echo that. Thank you for coming. As Representative Tanner was just saying, they don't have staffs here. So really, this is an opportunity for citizen government to really become a thing. And coming here to Capitol Clarity, watching on the stream, that's part of it. Getting the information and then bringing information to your legislators, sharing what you know, using your own skills in your own fields. We have legislators who are, business owners and lawyers and teachers. But we have citizens who are all those things and more. So that's where you can really get involved. I appreciate you coming, making the time to be here. I appreciate Senator Zuiderveld and Representative Tanner. They don't get paid any extra to come here and do this for you. So I really appreciate that. Remember to go to idahofreedom.org or capitalclarity.com to see what's coming up next and also to get more information about the organization. I just want to put out one plug for the AssembleX Idaho team on Twitter or X. They allowed me to come on and promote this show last night on their weekly Wednesday show every 7 p.m. So if you're on Twitter or X, find AssembleX Idaho. They've got a few cards in the back. I appreciate them for letting me do that and also for what they're doing. So next week, we have another great show lined up for you. So we'll see you then. Have a good day.